The sun was setting behind tall trees when she woke up. She was lying on cold, rough ground. Her skin felt wet and dirty. She looked down and saw she had no clothes. Her body trembled with fear. The forest around her was quiet, but strange sounds came from far away. She tried to remember where she was, or how she got there. Her head hurt badly. She blinked many times, but nothing came to her mind except her name, Lyra. She did not know why she was alone or why she was naked and scared. Slowly, she stood up. Her legs were weak, and she felt dizzy. She looked at the sky. The stars were starting to shine. The trees were tall and dark, and strange shadows moved between them. She heard a soft rustling noise nearby and froze. Her heart beat fast. She remembered stories from her people. The forest was full of wild animals that could kill a small alien like her in seconds. She wanted to run, but her body felt heavy and slow. Then she heard a voice, deep and calm, from behind a tree. "Are you okay?" The voice said in a language she did not understand, but somehow sounded gentle. Lyra stepped back and hid behind a broken branch. She was too afraid to answer. She stayed still, hoping the voice would go away. The voice came again, softer this time. "I'm not going to hurt you." She peeked carefully and saw a man walking slowly toward her. He wore clothes made of thick fabric, and he carried a small bag. His skin was pale, and his hair was dark. His eyes were kind and curious. Lyra's fear mixed with hope. Maybe this man could help her, but she did not know if he was friend or foe. The man stopped a few feet away and knelt down to seem less scary. He reached into his bag and took out some fruit. He showed it to her and smiled. Lyra did not understand the fruit, but hunger made her take a step forward. She took the fruit carefully and smelled it. It was sweet and fresh. Slowly, she ate a small piece. The man waited patiently. He did not speak words she knew, but his face showed he wanted to help. After eating, Lyra felt a little stronger. She looked around, trying to find any sign of her ship or crew. But the forest was thick, and the night was growing colder. The man looked at her body and saw she had no clothes. He took off his jacket and offered it to her. She hesitated, but the cold made her accept. The jacket was large and warm. It covered her thin arms and body. For the first time, she felt safe. The man spoke again, using simple words. "Name?" he said, pointing at her. Lyra thought for a moment. "Lyra," she said softly. He smiled. "Daniel," he said, pointing to himself. They repeated the names a few times until they both understood. Daniel helped Lyra stand up. She was still weak but could walk a little. He showed her a small shelter made of wood and leaves. It was his home. Inside there was a fire burning and simple tools. Daniel gave her water in a clean cup. She drank slowly, feeling the cool water wash away some of her fear. Daniel watched her carefully. He saw she was not from his world. Her skin was pale blue and her eyes were big and bright, but she looked tired and gentle. Lyra wanted to tell her story, but the words were lost. She only remembered flashes, a big ship, an explosion, loud sounds, and then darkness. Daniel did not ask too many questions. He knew she needed rest. He gave her some clean clothes he had prepared for emergencies. They were not perfect for her, but they covered her well. That night, Lyra sat near the fire, wrapped in the warm jacket. She looked at Daniel, feeling safe, but still afraid. She wanted to remember who she was and what had happened to her people. She wanted to find a way home. Daniel watched her quietly. He felt something strange, an urge to protect her, to help her survive. Outside, the forest was full of unknown sounds. But inside the small shelter, a fragile hope was born. The next morning, sunlight entered the small shelter through gaps in the wooden walls. Lyra opened her eyes slowly. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she saw Daniel sitting near the fire, sharpening a small tool, the jacket he had given. Her was still warm around her body. She touched it gently. It felt strange but comforting. Daniel noticed she was awake. "Morning," he said with a friendly smile. He pointed at a pot near the fire. "Food." Lyra could not understand all, his words, but she understood his actions. He gave her a bowl with warm soup made from plants and roots. She tasted it carefully. It was different from her food, but it filled her empty stomach. After eating, Daniel took out a small notebook. He drew a picture of a spaceship and looked at her. "Yours?" he asked. Lyra stared at the drawing. Her hands began to shake. She nodded slowly and pointed to the sky, then covered her face. Daniel understood she had lost something important. He put the notebook aside and tried to calm her with soft words. Even though she did not understand everything, his tone made her feel less alone. Daniel stood up and pointed outside. "Work," he said. He picked up a basket and an axe. Then he pointed at her and smiled. "Help?" Lyra hesitated. She was still weak, but she wanted to be useful. She nodded. Outside, the forest looked peaceful in daylight. Birds flew above, and small animals moved between the trees. Daniel cut some wood while Lyra carried small pieces to the shelter. She watched how he worked, careful, strong, and smart, at duh. First, she was afraid of the forest sounds, but Daniel showed her which animals were safe and which ones to avoid. He used simple gestures, drawing in the dirt when needed. When they returned, Daniel gave her some clean water. Then he pointed to himself and said, "Human." He pointed to her, raising his eyebrows, asking who she was. Lyra touched her chest. "Lyra," she said again. Then she tried to say a word from her language. "Vera." Daniel repeated it slowly. "Ve-ra?" She smiled a little and nodded. She pointed to the stars. "Vera," she said again, trying to explain her species. Daniel understood only part of it, but he realized she was not from his world. That night, they sat by the fire again. Daniel tried teaching her a few human words. He pointed to the fire. "Fire." Lyra copied him. Fire." He pointed to water. "Water." "Wa-ter," she said, trying hard to learn. Daniel laughed softly, not to mock her, but to encourage her. She smiled back, feeling a small warmth inside. Days passed slowly. Lyra began to trust him. She learned simple words: food, water, help, danger. She also taught him some of her words, making both of them laugh when he pronounced them wrong. One evening, while gathering wood, Lyra froze. She heard a loud roar in the distance. Daniel grabbed his weapon and looked around. From the shadows, a large animal with sharp teeth appeared. Its eyes glowed in the dim light. Lyra stepped back in fear. Daniel stood in front of her, raising his weapon. "Stay behind me," he said. The animal charged, but Daniel threw a burning branch at it. The fire scared the beast, and it ran back into the forest. Lyra was shaking, but Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Safe," he said softly. That night, she realized Daniel was not just kind. He was brave. He risked his life for her without hesitation. As they sat near the fire, Lyra looked at him and said slowly, "Thank you." Daniel smiled. "You're welcome." For the first time since she woke up alone, Lyra felt that maybe she could survive. She still did not know what had happened to her ship or her people, but she was no longer completely alone. Daniel, too, felt something he had not felt. In years' companionship. He had lived alone on this planet for a long time, but now he had a reason to protect someone. The forest outside was dark and full of dangers, but inside the small shelter, two strangers from different worlds slowly became friends. Lyra's heart was still heavy with questions, but she knew one thing: this human had given her hope. The morning air was cool, and the forest was quiet. Lyra stood near the fire, staring at the sky. She had been having small flashes of memory every night, bright lights, loud alarms, and the image of a large ship falling from the sky. Daniel noticed her troubled face. He walked to her and gently asked, "Dream?" Lyra nodded. She pointed at the sky and then at the ground, making a motion of something crashing. "Ship. There." Daniel understood. "You want to find it?" he said. Lyra nodded again, her eyes serious. She touched her head and said, "Memory, ship." She made a shape in the air with her hands, trying to show a box. "Black box," Daniel whispered to himself. If they could find the ship's black box, maybe they could send a signal to her people. Daniel packed food, water, and tools into a small bag. He gave Lyra a sturdy walking stick. "Long walk," he said. "Danger." Lyra understood the word. She nodded, ready to follow him. The two of them left the shelter and began their journey through the forest. The ground was uneven, and the trees grew thick and twisted. Strange insects buzzed around them, and now and then distant animal cries echoed through the air. Daniel led the way, cutting vines and clearing small paths. Lyra followed closely, watching every movement. Hours passed. They stopped by a small stream to drink water. Daniel showed her how to catch fish with a simple spear. Lyra tried, failing at first, but finally managed to catch one. She laughed softly, proud of herself. "Good," Daniel said, smiling. He cooked the fish on a fire before they continued. As they walked, Lyra began to remember more pieces of her past. She told Daniel simple words in her language: ship, crew, attack. Through gestures, he understood that her ship had been attacked before it crashed. The forest grew darker as thick clouds covered the sun. The wind picked up, and the air felt heavy. "Storm," Daniel said, looking up. They hurried to find shelter under a large rock formation. Rain poured down, and thunder shook the ground. Lyra sat close to Daniel, shivering from the cold. He gave her his jacket again. That night, as rain fell outside, Lyra dreamed again. She saw her people running on the ship, alarms blaring, and enemy ships firing at them. She woke up breathing hard. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Safe," he whispered. She nodded but knew the danger was not over. Whoever had attacked her ship might still be looking for survivors. The next morning, the rain stopped. They continued walking until they finally reached a large open area. Burnt trees and metal pieces covered the ground. Lyra froze. Her heart sank as she saw the wreckage of her ship. The once great vessel was now a broken skeleton of metal. Smoke, no longer rose from it, but the air smelled of burnt fuel. Daniel looked around carefully. "Careful," he warned. He could see footprints near the wreck. Fresh ones. Lyra stepped forward slowly, her eyes filling with tears. She touched a piece of the ship, remembering her friends and crew. Suddenly, they heard voices. Daniel quickly pulled Lyra behind a fallen tree. He peeked out and saw three strange figures moving around the wreck. They wore dark armor and carried weapons. Lyra's face turned pale. She whispered in her language, "Raiders." Daniel understood from her tone. These were the ones who had attacked her ship. The raiders were searching through the wreck, looking for something or someone. Daniel whispered, "We wait. Night." Lyra nodded, her heart pounding. They had to be smart. Fighting head-on would be too dangerous. As night fell, Daniel and Lyra quietly moved closer to the wreck. They hid in the shadows, avoiding the raiders' lights. Finally, they reached the part of the ship where the black box might be. Daniel opened a broken panel with his tools. Inside, among burnt wires and twisted metal, they found a small device glowing faintly. Lyra's eyes widened. She touched the box gently. This was the key to calling her people. But just as they were about to leave, a branch cracked under Daniel's foot. The raiders turned their heads, their lights sweeping across the wreck. "Run," Daniel whispered. They grabbed the black box and ran into the forest as the raiders shouted and chased after them. The night was dark and the forest was thick, but Daniel knew the paths. He led Lyra through narrow trails and rocky ground. Behind them, the raiders' lights grew closer. Lyra held the black box tightly against her chest. She knew this was their only chance to survive and to find her people again. But the chase had only just begun. The forest was dark, and the only sound was heavy footsteps behind them. Daniel and Lyra ran as fast as they could, branches hitting their faces and arms. Lyra held the black box close to her chest, afraid of dropping it. "Faster," Daniel whispered, breathing hard. He knew the raiders were close. After running for several minutes, Daniel stopped near a rocky hill. "Hide," he said, pointing to a small cave hidden behind vines. Lyra crawled inside while Daniel stayed outside, covering their tracks with branches and leaves. The raiders' lights passed nearby, but they did not see the cave. Lyra could hear their voices in the distance. Her hands trembled as she held the box tighter. When the raiders finally moved away, Daniel entered the cave. "Not safe here," he said softly. "We fight." Lyra's eyes widened. "Fight?" Daniel nodded. "We can't run forever, too fast, too strong. We make traps." She understood enough. Daniel started gathering branches, stones, and vines. He showed her how to build simple traps, holes covered with leaves, sharp sticks tied to branches, and rocks balanced on high ledges. Lyra followed his instructions, helping as best as she could. Her fear slowly turned into determination. As they worked, Daniel looked at her and said, "Together." "Together," she repeated, her voice firm. The time the moon was high, the traps were ready. Daniel took out a small torch and held it in his hand. "We make noise," he whispered. Lyra nodded, her heart beating fast. Daniel threw a rock far into the forest. It hit a tree with a loud crack. Soon, the raiders appeared again, their lights moving closer. "Stay behind me," Daniel whispered. The first raider stepped on a hidden vine, and a branch swung down, hitting him hard and knocking him back. The second raider fell into a hole covered with leaves, shouting in pain. The third raider aimed his weapon at Daniel, but Lyra picked up a rock and threw it with all her strength. The rock hit the raider's helmet, making him stumble. Daniel rushed forward and pushed the raider down. They struggled on the ground, but Daniel's strength and quick moves helped him win. When the fight ended, the forest was silent again. Two raiders ran away carrying their injured friend. Daniel breathed heavily, his arm bleeding from a cut. Lyra ran to him, her eyes full of worry. "Daniel, hurt?" He smiled weakly. "Just a cut." Lyra tore a piece of cloth from her clothes and tied it around his arm to stop the bleeding. "Thank you," Daniel said softly. "You save me," she replied, looking at him with gratitude. Daniel looked at the black box. "We go home," he said. They carefully left the area, knowing the raiders might return with more fighters. On the way back, Daniel started feeling weak. The cut on his arm was deeper than he thought. Lyra supported him as they walked. "Stay alive," she said slowly, her voice shaking. It was the first full human sentence she had ever spoken. Daniel looked at her in surprise, then smiled despite the pain. "I'll try." By morning, they reached a safe area near a high hill where Daniel had built an old signal tower. It was rusty, but still usable. Lyra placed the black box inside the tower's device. Lights began to flash as the box connected to the tower. A soft sound came from the machine, signals spreading far into the stars. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She touched Daniel's hand gently. "My people. Here." Daniel nodded. Good. But they both knew it wasn't over yet. If the raiders found them again before help arrived, they might not survive the next fight. Still, as they sat under the morning sky, side by side, both felt stronger than before. For the first time, they were not just strangers from different worlds. They were partners, ready to face anything together. The morning sun rose over the hill, painting the sky with soft orange light. Lyra and Daniel sat near the signal tower, waiting. The black box was sending a signal far across space, calling for help. Lyra's heart raced with hope and fear. Would her people come? Would they be kind to Daniel? Suddenly, in the distance, bright lights appeared in the sky. Ships descended slowly, shining like stars. "They come," Lyra whispered. Daniel stood and helped Lyra up. Together they walked toward the landing site. The ships touched down gently on the ground. A group of tall, graceful aliens stepped out. They wore silver suits and moved with calm confidence. Lyra recognized them instantly, her people. Lyra ran to them and hugged a tall woman who smiled warmly. It was her sister. The aliens looked at Daniel with curiosity and respect. One stepped forward and said in a soft voice, "Thank you, human, for saving Lyra." Daniel bowed his head. "I only helped," he said simply. The leader nodded. "Your courage and kindness are rare. You are welcome among us." Lyra looked at Daniel and then at her people. A choice lay before her: return to her world or stay with the human who had saved her life. She took a deep breath and said, "I want to visit Earth and see more of your world." Her sister smiled, understanding. "You will be our ambassador." Daniel's eyes shone with pride. "I will come with you," he said. The aliens agreed, and together they prepared to leave. Before boarding, Lyra turned to Daniel. "Thank you," she said. "You gave me hope when I had none." Daniel smiled back. "And you taught me to trust again." As the ships lifted into the sky, Lyra looked down at the planet she had learned to call home for a short time. She knew their bond was the start of a new friendship between two worlds, built on kindness, courage, and hope. The future was bright, because one human chose to help someone in need.